We're live, ladies and gentlemen, and we're here with my colleagues, John Chappelear, my wife and business partner, Linda Vettrus-Nichols, and the famous Jenny Landgren, and we're talking about people first. Only this week, we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to talk about love and forgiveness, which is a big part of best-selling book by John Chappelear, The Daily Six, and the famous quote is about to be spoken. John, why don't you come in here and lead this off? I think it'll be fabulous.
Concepts behind this, it was to try and be simple and easy to understand and not to be mistaken. I mean, if you go back to Greeks had 5 different definitions for love. So I was just working on the concept of sort of the friendship idea of love and the mutual supporting idea of love. And so for me, the definition of love in the book is understanding the needs of others and treating their needs as important as I treat my own. Not more important, and certainly not less important. And this was, when I first wrote this, I was thinking from the perspective of me, which was sort of a self-centered, covered with hubris type of everybody but me kind of person. And then once I started writing it and I started talking to more people, I realized there are a whole lot of people out there who always put other people first. It was completely like, oh, really? But then I started talking to teachers and nurses and other people who were being sort of, I wouldn't call it exploited, but I would call it overwhelmed by caring too much and putting everybody else's needs first. And so the idea here is not that my needs are more important, but it's also not that your needs are more important. My needs are as valid as your needs. And that was really important for me to learn from a know-it-all standpoint. And it's also been when I'm working with hospitals and I'm working with a lot of nurses or teachers, it's also important for them to realize and understand the value of their needs as well and make sure that they take care of those needs. And forgiveness, I have always thought of as giving up all hope of a better yesterday. It's the easiest way for me to think of it, because I mean, this old phrase of, well, yesterday's gone, so let it go. And the answer is, yeah. I mean, I can't keep inventing the way in which I wish things had come. The most poignant thing I can remember over the 25 years or so I've been working on this was sitting at a card table playing cards with a guy one time, and he had AIDS. And I said, well, these are just not the best cards I ever got. He said, well, mine aren't the best cards I ever got either, but they're the ones I got dealt, so they're the ones I'm going to deal with. And I thought, yeah, yes. What else are we going to play? It's sort of these concepts of one day at a time. It's like, yes, one day at a time. That's all we've really got. You can think of it as some sort of altruistic concept, but it's really all there is. So treating people as important and as needy and value as each other is important for me, and giving up the judgment, resentment, and angers that I've usually created at work, drag home, enhance at home, and then drag back to work. So letting those go allows me to be much freer and more confident and more comfortable as I move through each day. Terry, what do you think about that?
That's spot on. There's a part of our neutralization project in my trademark repeat behavior cellular regression. I love you and I forgive you so I can love me and forgive me. Break it away. It's just here. It's about presence. It's about being able to love yourself, ladies and gentlemen. It's okay, because if you don't love yourself, you're not going to be consistent, if at all, loving others. You can't give what you do not have. And I think Jenny works with clients that probably have these issues. And Jenny, I'd like to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Terry. And I myself, as a human being, have these issues, which is why it's so easy to connect with my clients. To me, love is a choice. A mentor once told me, you do what you love and you love what you do. As in, I don't always feel like doing something that is truly good for me. Let's take exercising, for example, or eating healthy foods. I make the choice to do what is good for me. And the more I invest in it, the more I give that a space in my life, the more I will start to appreciate and care for it. Same goes with relationships. I don't always feel like, respect is a choice. Holding space for a person is a choice. And I don't always feel like doing that. That's just how it is. And I get to make that choice. And the love grows, right? And
right. Good, good. Yeah. Linda and I talk about this forgiveness and love and choices. There's no good choices, no bad choices. And I love the way she talks about that. So I'm going to pass this over to Linda and bring her in, and we'll talk about choice maybe a little bit.
Yeah, that's like my favorite to talk about, that's for sure. Yeah, and like Terry says, no good choices, no bad choices. And a lot of us have been raised on that there, if you don't make a right choice, you're going to be in trouble and there's going to be a punishment. So I know, like Stina Marie talked about being sent to her room to figure it out alone, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that can relate to that. And it's not about that. When I think of the word choice, I think of the word outcome. We're choosing outcomes. And when we put like a heavy burden on ourselves, some people call it a goal, and we don't attain it, then it's really easy to slip into shame. I know that was the case for me. So I just tapped into, what do I really want to be doing right now? What are the outcomes I really want? And that mindset shift changed everything for me. And so I tell people that I don't have a to-do list, I have a pleasure list. And it's like, what do I want to do on my list? And my list is quite focused on my outcomes. So I even ended up writing like 22 books, about to publish a 23rd. So it worked. And I always tell my clients, do what works. When it comes to love, I was in a 33-year starter marriage. Terry was too. And I didn't even realize that I didn't love myself. And when we came together, and Terry's like that, love of your life kind of guy to me, and it wasn't enough. And so I did more work on myself, and came around. We even did like high-end coaching, which was super, super helpful. There was an exercise that I like totally flunked. Terry half flunked it. I totally flunked it. And that was the day I like really had my wake-up call to, I don't love myself. So what do I do? How do I do that? And one of the things is living for myself and determining what's important for me in the moment. And so those are the things that came up for me.
I love the way this is going. I love the way this is going. It cannot be overstated. Myself as a child, I spent I was about 150 yards from my front door to run up the side of a rocky mountain where I lived. So I was basically, even though I lived in a town, I ran around up there by myself all the time. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I'd run into a bear once in a while, or a deer or whatever, and I just sat down and watch them. They knew I was there, but they also could sense that I was not a threat. So they just kind of walk around a little bit, and then pretty soon they would just walk away. And it wasn't until I was probably in my mid-50s that all of that started to make sense about, in those days, I loved what I did, and I loved, I basically loved me. So it just came out of me. It was like an energy release into the world that, it's okay to be me. And at that point in time, I didn't know that it was not okay to be me. So I was very fortunate in saying that. And I'm going to roll this back to John now, and for some comments. Where is this taking you, John?
Well, it coming from the recovered big shot, which I tend to think of myself as, I'm in recovery, I'm a recovering big shot, is that the thing that this has done for me is to help me realize the value and importance of others. Rather than everything needs to come from me, everything that comes from me is the right thing. And the idea in valuing others and in encouraging and listening to the importance and input from others has made me a much more balanced individual, made me much healthier person, rather than trying to be responsible for all things at all times. That's a very sick position to be in. And since I've given that up, it has been the connections that I've made, both personally and professionally, have dramatically increased in value and in quality. It's made a dramatic difference. And the idea of the forgiveness that we were talking about earlier is this, not carrying all of this stuff forward, so that I've already sort of, in the old days, I would have already run through my list of resentments and anger and frustration before I picked up the telephone and started to talk to you. So I'd already be upset. So here is, if you can find a way to, and this was the most important thing for me, is to find a way to value others and find a way to let go of the negativity of the past, even if it was a half an hour ago or 20 minutes ago. Let that go. And it doesn't take a huge amount of time. I mean, when I work with people, I can teach them to do this in 15 or 20 seconds if they just, Linda does that with her breathing exercises. Just take a few deep breaths, settle yourself down, and your heart and your breath will sort of begin to align if you just calm down a little bit and don't be driven by your emotions as much as being driven by your values. I found that to be much more helpful to me, is to set up my values and allow those to be my drivers rather than my emotions.
I love it. Spot on, spot on. Jenny, I'm going to come to you on this, because I think this is a lot that I've heard when we've talked, when you work with your executive clients, that kind of comes to the fore for me. So maybe you could talk about that.
Absolutely, happy to. So what comes to mind is the misunderstanding, as I see it, that loving yourself is selfish. I've worked with many leaders who are afraid to love themselves because they're afraid that they will come off as selfish or egoistic. And really, when we take a closer look at it and we look at the people in their lives that sort of gave them that idea, it turns out that when we look at people who are very, like we would say, full of themselves, or can't stop talking about themselves, or very centered around their own opinions, and it turns out that they don't really love themselves. And that's why they are looking outward. They are outsourcing their sense of worth to be validated by the people around them. And the more my clients are growing a loving relationship to themselves, because I teach so much about the fact that we have a relationship to ourselves like we have to other people. And when they start treating themselves with care and kindness and affection and understanding everything that we're showing the people around us that we love, we're curious, we hold space for them, we want to understand what they need. They start serving from a full cup, and they actually are not so self-centered anymore. Actually, their gaze turns towards the people around them, and speaking from and living from their healed selves, they are like even better able to hold that space for the people around them and show up as the leaders that they truly are. So that's, yes, a take on that. And I can go on about forgiveness. I haven't gone there yet, but I will throw it back to you, Terry, and see what comes up.
Well, thank you on that. You know, I'm loving this conversation, absolutely loving this conversation. And, you know, for me, when I was on the bottom of the pyramid, it took a while to get to the top, but when I was on the bottom of the pyramid, you know, all too often, the people above me that I was looking to for guidance and support and mentorship and stuff like that just ignored me. So I made a choice at that point in time. Hey, these guys are not going to help me along, so I'm going to help me. I'm going to do what I feel is right. And I made some career choices early on in the Navy that turned out to be spectacular choices for me, not listening to these people who basically ignored me all the time. And when I got to up there to where I had a lot of people underneath me, I remembered that, okay? And I would sit with them and say, so how's it going? You know, how's your job going? You know, I see this part of your work box a little bit full. Can I help you with it? Or can I maybe explain some things that can get that work done for you? Oh God, yes, blah, blah, blah. I was just afraid to say something about it because I've been doing this for so long. These are confusing. I don't know what to do with them. So it's okay. Let's work it out together. Rather than saying, you idiot, why didn't you come into me and blah, blah, blah. I changed it around. I said, well, let's put it together. Let's go through it together and we'll both figure it out. Maybe I'll get a little better at it myself. And you'll figure out what it is that you're not connecting with. And that was powerful. My people who used to work for me, especially in the Navy, they got promoted quickly because we worked on the stuff that they were responsible to know to pass their test and become promoted. So the more that happened, the more I was loved, obviously, but it also paid back. You know, all of that love came back to me, you know, when those times when I would be out of the office doing other stuff because I had to, these guys would jump in and make sure the stuff that I was handling got done as well. That was the payback to the boss. Boss is always there for us. Let's hop in. And they do it, and they do it gladly. You know, I'm often quoted as saying, if you can be anything, be kind. And don't take any grief, but be kind, because it'll come back to you. And Linda's been having some problems with muting. I don't know if she's been able to undo it or not. She's back. Great. I want her to jump in here because she's done some work in this line. Linda?
Yes, I so thought of the joining, and we talked about this before, but you know, just the joining a child in what they're doing, stepping into their world, especially a child with special needs, all children, babies. If a baby goes, you do go, right? And moms a lot of times naturally do that. It is so important to join someone in their world before you expect them to join you in yours. And we all know that cigarette commercial where the dad's telling the kid not to smoke, but the dad's smoking, you know, right? Kids imitate, and they want to join you, and they especially want you to join them. So that's what popped for me. Thanks.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about love and forgiveness. This is a powerful subject, ladies and gentlemen, because I can tell just by the subject that it resonates deep with all of you that are watching us today, both live and the ones that will pick this up on a recording. And it's very validating, I'm sure, for you to hear some different perspectives on loving yourself and allowing yourself to love others, because we're all born with love. We learn how to create filters of hate and discontent and jealousy and all of those stuff. You look at a little child laying on their back, hands and fingers doing exactly the same thing and smiling and being at peace with everything, because that's all they have is love. Okay. And that's powerful. And John, you've done some work over in the Middle East along the lines of this type of concept. Can you speak on that for a little bit? I think it's relevant right now.
Thanks. Thanks, Terry. It is, because this is one of the things I said earlier about the way in which the Greeks defined love in many different ways. And many times, especially with the sort of this tough macho kind of leader that men try to be, women I find are, and I don't mean to be reductive. I mean, they're good and bad on both sides of the equation, but men tend to want to try and be in charge, and they do that through a myopic vision of, and myopic meaning it's my vision. And what has happened, at least in the work in which I've done in the Middle East, is in learning to change the concepts of love and forgiveness to simply connection and communication. Love creates a sense of connection. And people are much more comfortable when you're talking about creating connection than they are when you're talking about acting in a loving way, because they don't want to misunderstand what that means. So and if other people are working in countries where English is a second language, you have to be very careful about the words in which that you're using. So what we used is creating connectiveness and communication more effectively. And then the release of negative emotions, which would be for forgiveness. And it's interesting, once this began to permeate the mindset of the leadership, it really did begin to sort of run rampant throughout the entire organization, because if you help people understand, and this is what you were talking about earlier, Terry, if you help people understand that you want to help them be successful, you will be their conduit to success. I'm not trying to catch you up or come behind your back or anything. I just want to help you be successful, and what you do and what you say and how you act, prove all that. People will follow you anywhere you want to take them because they trust you. And I was talking to a client the other day. I said, if you can do this in your organization, you will be one of the only organizations that does this. You will be able to pick from the finest people looking for work in this industry, because none of your competitors are focused on the needs of the ones who work there. They're only focused on the bottom line instead of on the people who provide the bottom line. And the way in which you do that is by connecting with them on an emotional level. And certainly when I was going to school, and many of the years in which I was working in leadership and organizations directly, the idea of sort of showing emotion was not something that was a real positive idea. It was like, I'm in charge and you just take it, you do what I want you to do, you finally, and all that did was continue to repeat the same kind of negativity that had permeated business since probably before the Industrial Revolution. So it's, the idea here is realize that emotional connection is not weakness. Emotional connection is connection. And connection creates engagement, and engagement creates productivity. And we have to be willing to feel a little uncomfortable, because new behavior is uncomfortable, period, always. And so once we practice the uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable, we will never get where we want to be. So I know that's what happens all the time. We try new things, we don't feel good, then we go back. It's like dieting on the 1st of January. Everybody goes on a diet, everybody goes to the gym. By March, everybody's out of the gym and off the diet. And why is that? Is it because we're not healthy and not good for us? No, it's because it's uncomfortable. So whether it's good or bad, we go back to comfortable situations, and we have to press through that until we get to the other side, where we realize, this is what Jenny was talking about earlier, where you realize that I am worth the work it takes to get where I want to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jenny, I'm going to ask you to come in at this point, because I can remember some connections where you kind of talk about this with your clients. And if you would, I would like you to expand on this subject a little bit. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And I will go where my mind was going, though. and we'll see where that leads us. So we're talking about balance. Like, I work with clients who are afraid to show affection because they're afraid that that means that they will be boundaryless. And then I work with clients who give so much of themselves and there are very little boundaries and they're exhausting themselves and they burn out. So what I share with them is that your love is incomplete. You get to be yourself. You get to care for the people. You get to be the leader that you are, and you complete your love by including yourself. And this means that there is a boundary somewhere along the way, plenty of boundaries. And it's really about figuring them out. And where is the boundary for me? What does that look like for me? And how do I express that? How do I let people know what is important to me and how, what I appreciate or what kind of communication that I am setting out to be engaging with in this company or in my role. Can I go into forgiveness? Because I didn't touch on that yet. So I work with so many clients who they express that they struggle with forgiving. And I'm noticing on their journey and also on my own that sometimes we combine, like we associate forgiving with forgetting. And often that's how we were taught, you have to forget. Don't think about it anymore. And our brain is going to work against us because our brain is trying to keep us safe. And it's really, really harmful to be in situations where you were hurt and you forget about it, because then you're probably going to end up there again. So I teach, and I know Linda's beside me on this one, to forgive and remember. There's a healthy way to forgive and let go, accept, and fill your mind with what you are choosing, with the future, with what's a yes for you. And also, Linda, jump in. I was going somewhere. I don't know where. Tackle.
Well,
Yeah, I'm in.
The idea of forgive is just don't forget who crossed your boundaries. Don't, it's like, remember what your boundaries are. It's not like you lost them, right? It's just, they're there. You just didn't use it. So use it. And really, if you don't know who you are or what you want, you're going to be pretty boundaryless. They're there, but you're just not in touch with them. So, hello, right?
And we get to stay in clarity. Confusion is very scary. Confusion means that I'm not accessing my power. I'm not accessing my choices. But we get to forgive and remember and stay in clarity and appreciate and live in the present, right, and enjoy our future.
Yeah, and just look at the Holocaust, that's a real big, forgive and remember. Go ahead, Jenny.
No, I was good. Back to you, Terry.
Okay, so back to the big guy that started it all out. We're talking about love and forgiveness today. And, a final thought that came to mind for me was one time I had a new person come to work at the office where I was in charge. And he got a little angry at one of his supervisors who worked for me. And he says, "You make the big bucks. Why don't you do this?" And I said, "Excuse me, fellows. Here's what happens in this office. I get paid for doing what I do. John, as it turned out to be, not this John, as it turned out to be, gets paid for what he does. And you, young man, get paid for what you do. Now, in order for you to earn your pay, you get to do what you're here to do. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to assist and train you, but that's your job, okay?" And the light went on to this guy like, well, yeah, that's true. You know, any final thoughts, people? John?
I don't know. I think we've covered it pretty well. The idea for me was just the realization that this is good behavior for us. This is very much put your mask on before you help your children, you know, kind of thing on an airplane. It's just, we have to have, we cannot give if we do not have. And so the purpose here is to find a way, and this is the part of the Daily Six that I wrote, was so that we could sort of set ourselves up by being willing, creating a path, and then moving forward into the lives of our lives and the lives of other people. If we have an intention and we have a way to remind ourselves of that intention, we can begin to move into a positive process and positive mindset. But if we set an intention and then simply walk away from it, I think we should probably have an intention reminder. Maybe we should create that. I don't know. But the idea is that, you know, create something that you're moving towards. Don't just show up and react to the day as it comes at you. Create an intention, move towards that intention, and stay in a positive frame of mind. And that way, I think you'll find yourself enjoying the company and input from other people.
Great on. Great on. Linda, you got some final thoughts?
No, I'm good. It's a good wrap-up show here.
Jenny?
I feel very complete, actually. Thank you, Terry.
You're on mute.
I'm on mute. So am I, and I'm the one that usually keeps talking. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to our broadcast today. Please put your comments in the comments below. Address it to any or all of us, or just make a general comment. We would love to come in and respond to it. Thank you so much for being here today, and we'll see you next week.